State your name for the record." The chamber echoed with a dozen translator tones, alien voices hissing and clicking from every corner of the Galactic Tribunal. The man didn't blink, didn't bow, didn't even bother to stand. "Captain Elias, Vorn, Terran Vanguard, war criminal, they say." A murmur rippled through the crowd. One judge recoiled. Another adjusted their breathing mask. He leaned forward, smirking like a man who'd already won. "You summoned Earth to answer for its crimes?" He raised one eyebrow. "Bad move, because now you have to hear what we did and why we'd do it again." The courtroom was carved from obsidian and arrogance. Towering spires of polished stone reached into a cathedral-like void, filled with the muted hum of alien murmurs and self-importance. On the high platform at the center sat the tribunal, 12 alien magistrates from 12 species that had once laughed at humanity's late arrival to the stars. Now they weren't laughing. Elias Vorn didn't bow when they called his name. He stood, wrists cuffed, boots clanking against the metal floor. He didn't flinch at the dozen guards, each from a species his troops had routed in battle. One of them, a scaled Graxian, avoided his eyes. Smart. A floating orb scanned him, beeping approval. "State your designation for the record," Velthorin said. His voice was smooth, precise, and devoid of warmth, like a scalpel dipped in oil. "Captain Elias Vorn, Terran Vanguard, Black Division." "Retired," he said, voice clear, unapologetic. A translator helm hovered near his head. "I don't need that," Elias added. "You will wear it for protocol. Your court's already a performance. No need to add props." A faint rustle of offense moved through the delegates. Velthorin's eye ridges twitched. "The charges against you are extensive." I skimmed the list. "Real imaginative stuff. Shiu," Vraxian magistrate continued undeterred. 312 counts of war crimes, including but not limited to planetary sterilization, unauthorized use of neuroweapons, subversion of religious structures, species-targeted psychological warfare, unauthorized AI deployment, and the weaponization of captured prisoners. Elias smiled, slow and deliberate. "Only 312? Thought it'd be higher." "You find this amusing?" Velthorin's voice sharpened. "I find it predictable." The gallery of alien representatives leaned in, some with disgust, some with curiosity, a few with fear. Velthorin tapped a claw on his data terminal. "You are afforded one chance to explain yourself before sentencing." "That's generous," Elias said, stepping forward. The cuffs clicked open. A calculated gesture. Not mercy. He rubbed his wrists, then looked directly at the tribunal. "Earth pleads not guilty," he said. Velthorin let out a sharp exhale. "You intend to deny these acts?" Elias cocked his head. "Oh no, we did them. Every last one. What I'm denying is the idea they were crimes." The silence in the room was instant, thick, waiting to shatter. "You're confessing." "I'm clarifying," Elias replied. "Because I know what this is. You're not after justice. You're after reassurance. You want to believe we're monsters. That way you don't have to ask what you would have done if you were in our place. You annihilated 10 billion Vraxian colonists. You mean the ones who opened fire on a humanitarian convoy carrying our diplomats? They claim it was a sensor error. And I suppose the second strike on our embassy 2 months later was a typo." Velthorin narrowed his gaze. Earth's retribution was disproportionate. "No," Elias said, voice steady. It was educational. A new screen lit up behind him. Footage began to play, grainy, raw. A human child crawling through rubble, her face bloodied, reaching for the shattered body of her mother. The seal of the Vraxian Naval Command stamped on the missile casing embedded in the debris. Murmurs again, louder this time. "We tried peace," Elias said. "Tried diplomacy. Tried your system of treaties and polite lies. You spat in our face. So we stopped playing your game. Velthorin's voice grew cold. Your retaliation came 6 years later, after peace talks had begun. We waited until you were comfortable, that was the point. Another screen lit. A timeline. Attacks, betrayals, blockades, denied aid, sabotaged colonies. We don't start wars, magistrate. Elias continued. We end them, and we end them fast, because we know something you've forgotten. Velthorin leaned forward. And what's that? War isn't about fairness. It's about survival, and humanity's been very, very good at surviving. The tribunal room felt colder. Even the lighting dimmed, like the station itself was holding its breath. You slaughtered entire populations, one ambassador hissed. We dismantled threats, Elias corrected. And not one of those threats existed until someone made the mistake of underestimating us. Velthorin regained his composure. So your defense is that might makes right. Elias chuckled. No. My defense is that we warned you. You saw our history. You called us violent, reckless, dangerous. Then you gave us just enough rope to hang you with. You're admitting to premeditated galactic destabilization. I'm saying we were slow learners. But once we caught on, we learned faster than anyone else. More footage. Vraxian. Warships torn apart by Terran stealth tech. Enemy communications scrambled mid-battle by Earth's AI viruses. Colonies surrendered without a shot, just from hearing Elias Vorn was inbound. The tribunal tried not to look shaken. Most failed. Why did you come here, Captain? Velthorin asked. You could have refused summons. No force in the galaxy could have brought you in. Elias stepped to the edge of the platform, his voice low and sharp. Because the galaxy needs to understand something before it gets any dumber ideas. You thought you could shame us, isolate us, threaten us into submission. He let the words hang, savoring the silence. You think this is a trial, but it's not. It's a warning. The chamber stayed still. Then slowly, Elias turned to the viewing balcony and stared straight into the sea of alien eyes watching. Earth isn't sorry. We're not broken. And if you ever come for us again, he raised one finger. Just one. You won't need a court. You'll need a second galaxy to bury the pieces. And then he smiled. The first smile any of them had seen that didn't look human at all. The lights dimmed slightly, signaling the transition to the next phase of the trial. Holographic panels unfolded above the tribunal, each displaying archived footage, sensor data, and recovered transmissions. The gallery murmured in anticipation. Elias Vorn remained standing, arms crossed. He didn't ask for a chair. Velthorin adjusted the translation field and began. You claim Earth's aggression was retaliatory. Yet the attack on Vraxian colony site 74 Delta came after years of no direct confrontation. How do you justify a full orbital sterilization against a supposedly neutral outpost? Elias shrugged. Easy. They weren't neutral. They just learned to lie better. He gestured upward, and a separate feed began to play. Terran black box data from a diplomatic ship, the Mercy, destroyed en route to peace negotiations. No weapons, no armor, pure civilian spec. Vraxian war signatures were present on the debris. The date stamp was clear, 6 years before the 74 Delta incident. They killed our envoys on a mission of peace, then called it a navigational error. We lost 19 people that day. One of them was my brother. Velthorin's tone stayed flat. An unfortunate misunderstanding. The colony had no ties to that event. Elias's voice sharpened. You're still pretending we didn't connect the dots. But we traced the funding, supply routes, even fuel signatures. You used the colony as a ghost hub to support those ambushes, then scrubbed it clean when we started asking questions. He walked forward, slow and deliberate, until he stood inches from the projection of the tribunal's crest. You expected us to bow. Instead, we learned. We adapted. Flashback footage replaced the panels. A Terran response fleet in low orbit. Cloaked, silent, precision-focused. Operation Black Winter, the first retaliatory strike after years of silence. The feed showed no dramatic music, no heroic charge, just surgical devastation. Reactor cores detonated in synchronized bursts. Weapon caches disintegrated before they were powered. Comm centers blinked offline one by one. Elias spoke as the images rolled. We could have carpet-bombed the entire surface. We didn't. We hit only critical military infrastructure, minimal collateral, by your own damn definitions. But it was a colony, one ambassador said. It housed civilians. They built missile platforms into hospitals, Elias replied. Schools doubled as encrypted relay stations. You want to pretend they were innocent? You're lying to yourselves, not me. Another delegate interrupted, a thin insectoid from the Halveri Dominion. Your silence during those 6 years, it was deliberate. Elias turned to face him. Yes. Why wait? Why not respond immediately? Because we'd seen how you fight. You retaliate in anger, you fight to punish. Humans, we fight to win. A murmur rippled through the gallery again. Elias could feel the shift. Some of them were no longer disgusted. They were intrigued or afraid. He continued. We used that time to map your systems, study your patterns. We learned your doctrine, your blind spots, your weaknesses. We didn't just want to survive. We wanted to make sure no one ever tried us again. Velthorin folded his hands. You escalated the war into total conflict. No, Elias said. You escalated it when you chose deceit over diplomacy. We just answered your language, fluently. He flicked a finger, and a new visual flared. Intercepted communications from the Galactic Concord's private channels, codenamed Containment Directive. Orders to isolate humanity economically and technologically using provocations, and controlled conflicts to slow their expansion. This was never about our aggression. It was about your fear. You saw what Earth was becoming. You tried to clip our wings before we left the nest. The silence was now heavier. More than a few delegates stared at their own notes, suddenly very still. Velthorin, to his credit, held his composure. You assume those documents are authentic? They're yours, Elias said. We cracked your own encryption. We even left your watermark intact. And what would you have done in our place? Another judge asked. Faced with a rising civilization, unpredictable and volatile? We would have welcomed them, or at least stayed the hell out of their way. He took a deep breath and let his voice drop just enough to force silence. You created this version of humanity. Every betrayal, every broken treaty, every accident you buried in bureaucracy, it shaped us. You didn't leave us any other path. And when we walked it better than you expected, you called it barbarism. Velthorin leaned back. What of the civilians who suffered in your reprisals? What of the billions displaced? Elias didn't blink. What of ours? Or don't Terran lives count in your calculus? He gestured again. The screen shifted once more, this time to a human refugee convoy, its hull breached, bodies frozen in space. A child clutching a shredded toy, suspended mid-air. Look at them, Elias said quietly. You talk about justice, you talk about proportion, but when they were ours, you called it strategic attrition. When it was yours, you remembered morality. No, one spoke. After several seconds, Elias turned away from the holograms and stepped back to the center of the platform. Earth didn't come to the stars to conquer. We came to belong. You slammed the door in our face and called us rabid when we kicked it in. Velthorin's voice cracked as he asked, And would you do it all again? Every move, Elias said without hesitation. But next time, we won't wait 6 years. We'll finish it in 6 days. and for the first time since the trial began, no one in the tribunal had a response. Vel Thorin's voice cut through the stale tension. Let's address the more insidious matters. Your psychological campaigns, biointerventions, and the desecration of cultural icons. Do you deny deploying targeted neuroweapons and cognitive subversion across sovereign systems? Elias didn't answer right away. He turned, walking in slow arcs at the edge of the tribunal platform, letting the question hang in the silence like a noose. No, he said. We did all of that. And more. A few in the gallery gasped. Others leaned forward like predators scenting blood. The tribunal activated a projection, cycling through flagged incidents, subliminal mind-rot codes in civilian broadcasts, entire enemy fleet surrendering after 3 weeks of exposure to white noise frequencies, the viral collapse of a belief system on Dorun Prime following a hacked prophecy. Vel Thorin stood. You inverted a religion to destabilize a civilization, Elias nodded. Because they used that religion to rally suicide cults against our supply convoys. You forged divine texts. No. We repurposed them, inserted predictive phrases, altered symbolism. They believed their gods had changed their will. They stopped fighting. Some laid down arms. Others marched into the sea to meet salvation. That wasn't conquest. That was release. You played God. We played survivor. The room buzzed with conflicting reactions, revulsion, awe, disbelief. Elias approached the central console, tapping to open a dossier. He pulled up a video log, declassified now. It showed a human black ops team on Thaxa 6 planting sonic, fracturers in a canyon temple. The resulting harmonic dissonance echoed across the region, disrupting cognition and lowering resistance to suggestion. The Thaxan Council surrendered 2 days later. No shots fired. Vel Thorin's composure fractured. You reprogrammed their minds. No, Elias said. We used sound to create cognitive fatigue. Their surrender was still a choice. It just wasn't a loud one. Another projection. A Terran AI named Karen inserting false memories into enemy war leaders through hijacked neurolinks. One general surrendered his fleet after hallucinating. 1,000 years of defeat. Vel Thorin barked, This is not warfare. This is manipulation. Propaganda weaponized to a grotesque degree. It's called strategy, Elias replied. We understood something you still don't. Your rules of engagement were designed for wars you could afford to lose. We couldn't. An ambassador from the Daskari leaned forward. Your techniques caused the mass collapse of entire generational knowledge frameworks. You shattered identities. They were killing ours, Elias said. So we shattered back. Another example flicked onto the screen. Project Mirror Light. Human agents embedded subliminal emotional triggers into broadcasted entertainment. Songs, news cycles, dramas, all embedded with a quiet despair that led entire planetary militias. To disband before Earth's troops ever landed. You fought with whispers, Vel Thorin spat. We fought with results, Elias shot back. A moment passed. Then another judge, old and silent until now, leaned into the microphone. She was from the Galactic Court, her voice like wind over frost. Why not meet us on the battlefield? Face to face. Why reduce proud cultures to broken psyches? Elias turned to her, slowly. Because you taught us the battlefield was a lie. Her expression didn't change, but the ripple of her silence was louder than protest. You called it combat, but you never truly risked anything. Your species sends clones, drones, contract legions. You sit in orbit behind your armadas and call that war. We couldn't afford that luxury. Every Terran soldier lost was a funeral. Every city burned was a scar. He tapped another feed. Footage of Earth's early defeats. Cities crumbling under alien fire. Orbital stations collapsing in flame. Refugees packed into shelters. Children forced into conscript academies. Resource-starved nations cannibalizing. Infrastructure just to keep lights on. We weren't given rules, Elias said. We were given ultimatums. A young ambassador from the scifi suddenly asked, "Do you feel remorse?" The question didn't sting. It just sounded irrelevant. Elias looked at him. "Do I feel remorse for saving Earth? No. I feel pride. And I feel sorry for the galaxy that thought we'd fight fair." Another hollow panel lit up, an intercepted message. An alien general admitting defeat, citing the intangible pressure of fighting humans. Morale collapsed. Units vanished into desertion. The phrase, Earthmare, began appearing in enemy intelligence reports, used to describe psychological fallout from human conflict. "You broke our will," the scifi ambassador whispered. "No," Elias corrected. "You broke it yourselves. We just made sure the pieces couldn't be put back together," Velthorin growled. "You view victory as justification for every method used." Elias didn't hesitate. "Yes." A hush fell again. He stepped forward, this time slower, quieter. "Every time you invaded us, you came with force. We came back with precision. You used fear. We perfected it. Not because we wanted to, because you left us no other language, so we spoke yours louder, sharper, smarter." His voice dropped. "And we're still fluent." No one replied. The screens went dark. Elias scanned the gallery of silent faces. Most looked away. A few didn't. A few watched him not with judgment, but respect. He took one last glance at Velthorin, then offered a dry smile. "Next time you accuse us of being monsters, remember? We didn't invent these weapons, we just made them work." He returned to his position. No more footage, no more theatrics, just the silence of a courtroom realizing it had misjudged the weight of the man standing before them. The doors hissed open with a mechanical groan, drawing every eye in the gallery. She was small, fragile, barely past adolescence by human standards. The tribunal had summoned her as a symbol, living collateral, not just data on a screen. She walked slowly to the stand, violet skin dulled by stress, long fingers trembling as she activated the translator field. Her eyes locked with Elias's as she began to speak. "My name is Sarai Vela. I was 9 when the humans came. My mother was a healer. My father taught songs to the wind towers. When the ground split beneath us, I thought it was an earthquake." Elias didn't flinch. "It wasn't," she said. "It was your minds, buried deep below our homes, set to detonate when our skies turned blue with sunrise. You took everything." She paused, lips trembling, and the chamber stayed painfully. "Still, do you have anything to say to me, Captain?" He stepped forward, slow, steady. "I do." Everyone watched, waiting for deflection, denial, apology. "I'm sorry your family died," Elias said, "but they weren't the ones we were aiming for. Your leaders built weapons bunkers under schools next to clinics, inside temples. They turned your cities into fortresses. We turned them into targets." A gasp broke from Sarai's throat. "That justifies what you did?" "No. It explains it." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't back down. "Then explain this." "What kind of people sacrifice children for victory?" Elias exhaled through his nose. "The kind who were being exterminated." He turned to face the tribunal. "You want to talk about morality now? After you cut off our supply routes? After you backed mercenary fleets to raid our colonies while pretending you weren't involved?" A panel behind him illuminated. Video records from intercepted command channels, showing a quiet, coordinated effort by several galactic powers to destabilize Earth's outer rim settlements. Entire food shipments redirected, vaccine convoys destroyed, pirates hired, paid in, untraceable currencies. Every line signed off by tribunal-connected names. "You played dirty," Elias said. "We just learned faster." Velthorin rose again, face taut with fury. "This is deflection, The subject is your atrocities, not political conspiracy. You don't get to call it conspiracy when your signature's on the manifest, Elias snapped. Another screen flashed to life. A classified document bearing Velthorin's own approval, stamped for a weapons embargo 2 years before official sanctions were issued. Denying Earth life-saving tech during a plague outbreak on Mars Alpha, Elias pointed at it. You delayed antiviral shipments for 4 months. 22 million died. That's not relevant to this. It's directly relevant, Elias. Cut in. Because you keep acting like Earth just snapped, like we were mad dogs. We didn't snap. We adapted. You pushed us into a corner. We built teeth. The gallery murmured again, louder now. A few species stood. One, representative of the Zendari Council, walked out entirely. Velthorin tried to regain the floor. If the galaxy had responded with force to your behavior sooner, perhaps none of this would have... You did respond. You just hid. You did it in shadows, with deniable fleets and plausible silence. He turned back toward Sarai. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I wouldn't if I were you. I'm telling you that the same people who sent us to war sat behind desks and called it diplomacy. He looked her dead in the eye. If I had done nothing, more children like you would have died. Except they'd have been human. Mine. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The tribunal called a recess, but no one moved. Delegates whispered in dozens of languages. Velthorin looked pale beneath his scales. As the lights dimmed, Elias remained still. The silence broke with a voice from the floor. Low, gravelly. One of the older ambassadors, Kark Thul of the Mokari Dominion, rose without permission. I remember when we first met your kind, he said. We laughed at you. Fragile, scattered, too emotional, not built for conquest. But then your colonies grew. Quietly, purposefully, and the moment we raised a hand, you bit it off at the wrist. He faced the tribunal. You call it horror. I call it inevitability. You created this outcome the moment you decided Earth was. A threat simply for existing. Velthorin tried to gavel order back into the room. You are not permitted to address the court. I no longer recognize this court, Kark Thul said calmly. Gasps echoed. Half a dozen races began to shift visibly in the gallery. Some were reconsidering their alliances. Others feared what would happen if Earth wasn't convicted. Velthorin turned back to Elias. You think this justifies your actions? Turning allies against each other with carefully timed theatrics? Elias narrowed his eyes. No, I'm not turning them. I'm reminding them they always knew the truth. They just didn't want to look at it. The tribunal tried to restore protocol. The lights flickered back to full. The gallery was told to prepare for the final phase of the trial. Elias didn't move. He glanced at Sarai one last time. I hope you live long enough to see peace, he said softly, because you deserve a galaxy better than the one that made me necessary. Then he returned to his place, unshaken, unbowed, unforgiven. The final session began with no ceremony. The tribunal chamber was quieter than it had been since the trial started. The tension had changed. It wasn't outrage anymore. It was fear, the kind that sank into bone and stayed there. Velthorin cleared his throat, but even that seemed forced. Captain Elias Vorn, the court has reviewed the full scope of charges, testimony, and supplemental evidence. A verdict is imminent. Elias stood still. No cuffs this time. No guards flanking him. None dared. Velthorin pressed on. Before sentencing, this council gives you one last opportunity to show remorse, to speak on behalf of your species, to renounce your tactics. The galaxy listens. Elias tilted his head slightly, then walked forward, calm, measured. The room stilled. You want a speech? He asked. Fine. He stopped at the edge of the dais, his voice low, but every ear caught it. You still don't understand what we are. You keep waiting for humanity to be ashamed, for us to apologize, to collapse under the weight of guilt. He looked around. The chamber, scanning each row of delegates, every nervous glance, every fidgeting ambassador. But we're not here because we lost our way. We're here because we found it, because we learned the rules of your game and broke them better than you ever imagined. A screen behind him lit up without command. It displayed Earth's fleet. Live feed. In orbit, dozens of human dreadnoughts. Carriers, black ships cloaked in folded light, each stationed above key galactic relay hubs, silent, watching. A wave of unease rippled across the chamber. Velthorin's voice cracked. "What is this?" Elias smiled without warmth. "Insurance. You threaten us? At your sentencing?" "No. I clarify reality. We came here to talk, not to beg. And we never show up without a way out." Another feed flicked on. Sector communications blackouts. Human operatives already embedded. Ports locked. Trade stations frozen mid-cycle. Elias continued. "You thought this trial was leverage, that you could shame us into playing by your rules. But the truth is, this entire trial was a distraction. While you were writing accusations, Earth positioned itself to burn your supply chains in 5 sectors. Delegates started shouting, scrambling messages to fleets. The tribunal fell into chaos. Velthorin slammed his gavel. "This is blackmail. This is deterrence," Elias snapped. "And it's not the first time you've seen it. You just weren't used to it coming from us." Velthorin pointed a claw at him. "You will not escape judgment," Elias walked forward again. "There is no judgment coming. You'll vote, sure. You'll scream and moralize. But you know what's really going to happen? You'll do nothing." He stopped. "Because Earth's too useful now, too powerful. You let it happen. You depended on our brutality when it suited your wars. You sold weapons to both sides and called it neutrality. You needed monsters. We became them. And now you want to punish us for wearing the mask you handed us?" The gallery was silent again. Elias didn't lower his voice. "You don't fear what we've done. You fear what comes next. Because we're not afraid of you. Not your fleets, not your courts, not your politics." A message pinged behind him. One word. "Unanimous." Velthorin's voice dropped. "The court finds Earth," but he never finished. "Because the chamber's central command feed, independent of any tribunal control, broadcasted a direct transmission from Earth. It was short. It didn't scream. It didn't threaten. It simply said, 'Verdict noted. We will proceed accordingly.'" Velthorin blinked. "What? What does that mean?" Elias answered. "It means the galaxy just lost the illusion of control." He turned to leave. No ceremony, no guard escort. Just the sound of boots against stone, fading as he walked through the silent hall. Not one person stopped him. Not even Velthorin. At the docking platform, his aide met him. "Sir, transmission from High Command. They say to initiate protocol. Veil if the court ruled against." Elias didn't break stride. "Tell them no," the aide frowned. "No?" Elias stepped onto the shuttle. "They ruled, but they didn't act. That's the difference." He paused in the doorway looking out over the stars. "They're not going to punish Earth. They're going to absorb us, fold us into their order, make us part of the machine that tried to kill us. Isn't that what we wanted?" "No," Elias said. "It's what we planned for. What we wanted was never to be underestimated again." The shuttle sealed. As it pulled away from the station, the tribunal shrank into the distance, smaller, quieter, more irrelevant by the second. Elias sat alone, eyes locked on the void, and he smiled, not out of triumph, but because, for the first time in 100 years, no one would ever mistake humanity for weak again.